very fast review, and I started doing some data work with that. Okay. That's the start. Well, an efficient market indeed is a financial market. All right. So could be stock market or the forex, right? The foreign exchange, rate markets, whatever market. Let me say it's efficient, or maybe more carefully formulated, informationally efficient. We just started, so we just said 2 sentences. When the current asset prices reflect all of the information, all of the relevant information. So to speak, if I know all of the past information, I can construct the prices. I should be able to say that. I should be able to say, all right, so if I know everything in the past, then I should be able to say what is the price. All right, so that makes it informationally efficient. And then, well, we have a hypothesis, which is called the EMH, or efficient market hypothesis, that it states that the markets are efficient, right, and sort of on the face value. Right? So that's sort of what we have. And now, why is it important? So if the markets are not efficient, then it means that there are, well, arbitrage opportunities that we can indeed earn money on the anomalies that exist in the market. Right? So that's sort of what we essentially know. And so to speak, if there is asymmetric information, say I know something and you don't know, right, about the market, then I can use my own knowledge to say what the prices are. You don't know, so I can benefit from the information that I have. And so what this information is and so on and so forth, how can one approach it? Let me tell you somehow some methods that we could really approach. So sort of give you some information. So that's sort of, this is about inefficiency. And if it exists, if markets are not efficient, then we will have abnormal returns that we can indeed benefit from, as I said. And sort of benefit from basically the information that we have on the inefficiency of the market. And as such, knowing whether markets are efficient or not is important. But what is market efficiency? That is actually a very hard topic. So what does it mean that markets are efficient? Because that's a very big thing. That's a very hard topic to look at. And then, so Fama in 1970 started formalizing this. Right? He said, okay, well, let's simplify matters. Right? And he said that we have weak forms, semi-strong, and a strong form. Right? So these are the three. And what we have in the weak form is that the current prices reflect all historical information. Right? Sort of what we know. That brings us back to time series analysis and so on and so forth. Right? So using dynamic models. So that's the historical market information. Strong form actually says that the current asset prices reflect all publicly available information, not only prices but also all the others. Right? Could be macroeconomic, could be political, basically cycles, could be essentially certain information that is publicly available, so you should be able to get it captured and use it to test when it comes to sort of the strong form. And then there's also the strong form where it includes all of the publicly available information, past information, and maybe private information. Information that you don't know. Say the board of a company comes and then sits and then decides about something. It's private, it's not publicly available. And so that's basically information that you have and it is there, it's private. So if you could include it, then you will be able to talk about the strong form of efficiency. Right? So that's sort of, this is about the information set. And empirical studies generally support the weak form. Right? And that is what we could also do to some extent here. Support the weak form in the long run. There are times or episodes where this weak form is not there, weak form efficiency is not there. And sometimes find anomalies that are, so sometimes there is arbitrage, but not always. Right? So that's sort of what we, so in the long run, then the Mercury says if you use all of the data that you have long periods of time, then you will be supporting the weak form. Right? So when it comes to testing, then we always need a model. To sort of, we need a model, and then the model has some parameters, or some basically characteristics, and then we check whether those characteristics are there or not. Right? So that's sort of what we have. So when it comes to testing, then we generally assume that the pricing model used by investors is correct. So that's sort of that they have a correct pricing model. Right? B is cap M, B whatever. Right? So that's sort of what it is. As such, so if you reject the efficient market hypothesis, it does not necessarily mean that the markets are not efficient. It may well be that the investors didn't have a correct pricing equation. Right? So the pricing model that they had will not be actually correct. So that's sort of important to bear in mind. That rejecting the null or that the markets are efficient doesn't necessarily mean that you have an inefficient market, or rather maybe that people didn't understand what sort of they had a wrong pricing. Anyhow, so let's basically go on and then see. I mean, there is one part of literature which is about technical analysis. Have you heard about that? All right. So technical analysis is something which is not really academically supported, that it brings money. Right? But it's widely used in sort of in practice. Right? I mean, probably you have seen some movies where people just sit and then they have a lot of big screens in front of them, and then there are some graphs with different colors and so on and so forth, red, green, and so on and so forth, and then they make sense of those. So these are, I mean, what they do is generally something which is about understanding short-run anomalies. All right. So these are what I mean, they use technical analysis for this. Okay. As I said, so technical analysis is not supported academically. That one says that in the long run they are just wrong. All right. So that sort of that doesn't work. But then maybe in the short run they bring something. What together with the experience, how to indeed interpret those graphs and so on. Maybe some of them I will produce for you today, so that we know what they are. They are very easy. So technical analysts essentially believe that if you start analyzing historical intraday or interday, inside the day or between the day prices, then you may be able to identify some trends. Okay, so that's sort of what technical analysts believe. Right? That if you start looking at sort of short run, so how the prices move, and then you say, oh, it seems that it's on the rise. Right? So somehow for a short period of time. And Quant told me some time ago that the VN stock index actually has been on the rise for quite some time, since April. Right? So that it has gone up.
Yes, I moved from April 2025 till now.
You bought this stock, that's right?
Yes, I bought this stock and gained about $300 over the past 3 months.
Which is good, right? That's actually very good in the investment. Right? So let's sort of look at the prices, they are on the rise for whatever reason. Maybe you have some information about the local sort of economy or the local market that you're in. And you say, things are going on. Maybe the central bank is saying something, right? So about the interest rates. I don't know. So they basically affect the movement of the prices. So
For example, I draw the leading regression line and calculate this slope, and then I sort the stock from the highest return over the period to the lowest return, and I pick that stock and I get from it.
That's sort of this is what is called technical analysis. It doesn't have a theoretical background, but it somehow has a feeling. So you do some models, some averaging, but regression is also an average. But of course, I mean, so sort of doing a regression with prices doesn't make sense, right? So because they are not really I0, so doing regressions with them, so they're not integrated of order 0, they're integrated of order 1. And then, so it means that their volatility grows. Integrated processes of order 1 are those that they have a very big volatility. If it is so, then it's not easy to analyze them. Right? So that's sort of what we know from theory. Right? But nevertheless, sort of, they may bring in short term money, 300 euros. That's the proof in front of us. Okay. So, but academic economists tend to be very skeptical about this. And I'm part of these folks. All right. I'm skeptical about that bringing in the long run. All right. But sometimes it brings, sometimes not. All right. So now, well, if you're, well, that's sort of a bit of luck. So you should be lucky, such that so the rise that you have, so you start actually the investment, and at the right point you come out. Right? So if you don't, then it may come down and you lose your money back. So that's sort of the stuff that one has here. But nevertheless, then they bring something. So I will basically tell you how to deal with them, some of the methods using Python. Maybe we also use what you said. All right, that's sort of let's check. So whether, let's go on and then check whether this efficient market hypothesis actually holds in practice. So they basically, well, I mean, the literature is big, so it basically brings some from 90s. So some were able to generate normal returns, some basically said no, it is not possible to generate sort of, it's in the 90s, so abnormal returns. And these are sort of very serious papers. And they analyze basically the data in the market very carefully and in a very structured way. So if you Google, then you find a lot of interesting papers, also more recent. But let's go on and then see how can we really test for existence of anomalies. All right, so sort of test whether the efficient market hypothesis is there. Well, maybe you use technical analysis, or maybe you use some other models. All right, from econometrics. Well, I mean, what one has, well, let's say omega t is the information that we know at time t. That's the information set. And then let's assume that we have an equilibrium acid process number. Right? That the expected value of the excess return tomorrow, given the information that we have today, is 0. Right? So that's sort of the model that we have been expected for. So under market efficiency, this omega t, as I said, so it includes all of the relevant information. All right? And as such, maybe one can take this equilibrium acid pricing model, all right, and then write it in the form of a regression. Or sort of, not a regression, but rather you have the returns tomorrow, there is a component that you can observe, plus some shock that you don't have. So they are exogenous, so they are observed tomorrow, and they are sort of expected value of those returns given the mass is essentially 0. So if you have this, then of course you know that the prices will be an AR1 process, right, with the AR coefficient equal to 1. Right? So the prices become a 0, an integrated of order 1 process. Okay. So in fact, then we can go and test. So if the prices are I1, so you test whether they are stationary or not. So you test for non-stationarity. And if this AR coefficient is 1, then you say that the markets are efficient, at least within this framework. And if otherwise, then we would say no. Right? So that's sort of, that if, say, the AR coefficient is 0.9, then you can use it to say something about the prices tomorrow. Right? So they are becoming weakly stationary, essentially. Maybe let's go do that. Right. So for the data that we have. Okay. That's the first Python stuff that you can do. We'll go back to technical analysis again. So that's sort of what. So if it comes to testing, so we come to those bullet points, then you can use unit retesting or some other types of tests, which are called variance ratio tests. So we'll talk about these briefly. But let's just start with testing whether prices, well, the market index essentially, prices are indeed fine one. Okay. Well, I'm sure you know what is the unit test, and you can indeed. So, what unit tests do you know? How do you test for a unit group? Which test do you use? Yeah, that's we use the augmented decoder test. I just asked this question to know whether you have heard it before, right? And you did it with Uwe Haskell, so this, right? Okay. So we can now do that in Python. You have implemented that maybe in a Stata or something else, I don't know. So maybe Python implementation is new for you. And that's the first time you test for a unit group using data. Have you tested for a unit group before? In a Stata. Oh, so you know it. So that's the you have a function which is called ADF. And so let's do it. Let's go and bring the data again. So we just bring the data from some of our previous programs. So we take the MPT performance measure. So that is what we have. And so this is the CAPM data, and I will take till here. Right, so that's sort of all that I'm taking. So you read the data, you clean it, right? You remember? Right. These are the price data. I'm taking this, right? And then going to, so that's the, well, we have read this file all over and over again in our class. So one of those files where we have read the data, then we take it, and then we can go on with that. Alright, so that's sort of what these are daily. You could do it monthly. So maybe the daily holds what sort of monthly notes or well, I mean, we just stay with the daily ones. Alright, so let's see, so it's reading, so the variables will come. Okay. Alright, so then we have the F, and then SP index is the variable that we are interested in. Right, we want to test whether this is what a zero integrated of order 1 or not. Right, so that's sort of what we have. So let's call it ADF for S&P 500. So these are the results. I mean, to do testing here, then there is a function which we can very easily bring. Alright, so I will go on top, and I will say from stats models, and in the time series analysis basically part, there is a section which is called the statistical tools. From that we import ADF. Right? So that's the ADF, which is located here. Time series, statistical tools, so stat tools, and the ADF. Right? So that's sort of ADF. So that's sort of what we have. Let's just run it so that it's active. And now we can run the test. Right? So well, that will be augmented Fuller test. Says okay, what is it that you want to test for? And we say here we have an SPX index. Right, so this is the market index. Right? Well, remember that this augmented Fuller then requires some lag length dynamics, you remember? Okay. And then you have to say, all right, so do I have a constant, do I have a trend, is it, so there were three, so ADF type 1, type 2, and type 3. So here we have a constant, so the prices generally have a drift in the so there will be type 2, and that means that this is a regression with C, so that's the default. Okay. So here we have here, right? You can define the max lag for the ADF, so how many lags is there? And then sort of the regression we leave at C, right? But also you can say that choose the number of lags in this automatically using AIC. So you don't need to worry, right? So because the number of lags you have to choose, right? So when it comes to running this test, and then this can be chosen automatically. Right? So by this function. I mean using AIC. Right? Because that's a lag selection. And then we can activate. So here we say that the auto lag is AIC. Good. Now we run. So let's see what is in this ADF S&P 500. So it has sort of a number of outputs here, right? And well, there are the critical values: 1%, 5%, 10%. How many samples do you have? All right. And also we have the p-value. The p-value is here. Well, they are not so nice. All right. The namings are not so clean, but if you look at the function itself, then you will see that the second element is the p-value. The first element that we have here is the test size. All right. So, well, let's maybe just print the p-value. Okay. So here, well, let's say we print the ADF and S&P 500 element 1. Alright? And that's the p-value. So the p-value is large. So what do we do? What do we mean? So small p-values rejected. And here the p-value is large. So we do not reject a lot of unit rate. And as such, these S&P 500 prices are a unit prices. Right? We don't have any evidence against them. Okay? So because the p-value is large. And that would indicate that the markets overall of these 10 years of data are efficient, at least using this test. Alright, that's sort of one way of approaching this. And there are other unitary tests, of course, like Phillips-Perron test, PP, it's called. And you only know ADF, right? For testing. Yeah. So that's just not the generalized version, ADF, augmented. Yes, that is what we are doing. So now we can derive the maybe from the next slide. So here then we have the augmented. Leaky Fuller test, and then we use type 2. Alright, so here. But there is also another test which is called PP. And they are the same. So that's the Phillips-Perron test. The only difference that they have is that, so Phillips-Perron, well, augmented leaky Fuller that needs some lags to take care of the short-run dynamic effects. And Phillips-Perron also takes care of the short-run dynamics, but in a slightly different way. So it takes care of the long-run variance, but directly estimating it and bringing it in the equation. They are, well, asymptotically equivalent. They are different. But there are also, these are, well, the earlier tests that were developed for unitary tests. is that the series are I1, so we test for these. And we have KPSS test. This is actually different. So it tests for the node when the series are I0. Let's test with the node I1.
The moon of stationary is connected with the beta.
Exactly. Yeah, so the node here is a stationarity. So here is unity. So here the node they are opposite each other. So here we need these unity tests. So there are some other unity tests too. Maybe I just named them for you, but not implemented. And so the other test is called Elliott-Rothenberg swap test. So ERS, 1996. That's an implementation paper, and that's more powerful than the other two tests, but it's not used so often because when the AEF came into being, then it was very fast implemented in most of the commercially available softwares, and then it was used over and over again, and then people just use it. And then there is a more powerful test. I myself also have a test together with Uwe Hassler. I have developed it. It is sort of more powerful than this in the small stuff. I haven't implemented it in any software, so maybe I should do a package. When I have time, that I should do it. So that it's available and you can use it for testing for you. So that's sort of a little bit different the testing principle. I think there are more stuff. Right? But these are the more important that they exist when it comes to testing for you. Right? That was a digression a little bit. With unity testing. But very good that you remember the KPSS. But this is not what we want. We want to test for non-stationary. Alright, so that was one. Okay, so one way of checking whether the series are, whether the market is efficient. Okay. So, but then there are other things. Alright. And for testing whether there is anomalies in the series. Right? So one way that has been historically around for testing whether the markets are efficient or not is to test whether there is a season in the series. Right? Well, if there is a season, it means that, for example, let's say that Monday has a lower return compared to Thursday. Alright. So returns are low in one day, and in some other day they are high. And it's called a weekday. So if you have weekday, then indeed you have a season, right? So some movement in the weekly, say, series. Or maybe there is a month effect, a monthly effect. So sort of here, I have 11, so these are 11 W's for the 11 not women, for the W barber trap, we mentioned it last week. Then we have, well, and then we check, and then we wish that these deltas are all zero, right? Well, there is no month effect, all right? But they are all the same. Those deltas that we have here are the differential effect with respect to the months that you have the base months, right? So they are 11. So you wish that they don't exist. Right? Or you may have week effects, right? So sort of, well, as I said, so a weekday effect, but one day has a higher month return compared to the other. Well, there is also something which is called the January effect. It doesn't exist anymore, but maybe you have heard it. That if you buy, say in December, if you sell in December and buy in January, so you go short in generating anomalies. Well, for the series that we have, let's check whether we have a weekday effect. Good. So we run this not monthly, but rather weekday. If it exists in our series, then we would say, well, I mean, there is an anomaly and you can work or sort of earn some money with it. Okay? So that becomes a bit of a regression. Alright, so then we have to generate some dummies which are for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, till the end, and then we go. So that's sort of what we can do. So let's. So here we have the F. So let's actually name them. So that is Unicode testing. Right. So now let's weekday effect. Right. So that's a weekday effect. So we want to basically check. So I need the dummies. Right. So in the F, then I can generate weekday dummies. Right. So that it is 1 when I'm on Monday, and 0 otherwise. It is 1 when I'm on Tuesday, and so on and so forth. So I can actually go on and do that. So, well, I mean, how to do it? That's actually not so hard. You can say I have df, so it's df. So let's call this variable week, alright? And then week will be, well, df, well, df should have a date, alright? Let's look at it. So that's the index, which is a date, essentially. And then here I would say the index. So dot dt. So that's the date. Then I need the weekday. Did I bring the dt? I didn't bring, so you have to basically import the date time. I don't have it there. So let's import date time as the. Alright, so then we can change the weekday as no attribute. So you have to change it to a date, that's okay. So we can change it to a date. So that will be to the to date time. So that's sort of first that I basically take the index, change it to date time, and then get the weekday as no attribute dt. Let's see directly. Alright, so that sort of works. So we need that, but I mean that is what it is. Let's look at the weekday, or that will be very fun. So let's say df week. Alright. So these are the values. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these are all of the 4 days of the week. Alright. So they'll generate that sort. Alright. Maybe I didn't need this to date time, also because they are already date time. But anyhow, so just leave it like that. I don't need the dt. So whatever. So let's basically take dummies out of all those. So we can go and run a regression. Alright. So here I can say df dummies, generate dummies, will be pd. But there is a very nice function which is called get dummies. So just generate dummies. So that's sort of what we have, and that is so from df, then in this week, basically time, then we go and then find the weekdays, and then I mean we can add a prefix to those, and that is the weekday. So that is the dummies that we have. Alright, so that is what it is. Right, true, false, true, false. So weekday 0 is true, and so on and so forth, right? 1, zero, then it is true, then it is a 1, right? So that is what we have as models, and we can use them in our regression. Okay. We can add it to this data frame. Good. So we can maybe go on and then see whether we can run a simple regression essentially with those. Alright. So let's look at one. So that is week day 0, which is a Monday, and so on and so forth, right? So that's sort of what we have. So let's run the regression. Or maybe we can contract it. So let's say we have df. So df is a concat. Alright, so concatenation of these two. So there are two, and then we can very easily put them together. So df numbers. And then along the color axis. Right? So we have all of them. Okay. And let's go on and then run our regression. Alright. Good? You're happy? So we have x, that will be df. And then, so that will be weekday 1. We are not so energetic. I didn't sleep well. 3 and 4. Alright, so that is the x's, right? Well, you first can add a constant maybe directly, so we have sm dot add a constant to all of those. Alright. So that will be the x. And let's look at the, well, now we need the returns. You remember? So that we had, let's go to some other programs where we had previously, let's say, pt, and we had these returns, so they are in terms of log. I just copy paste that. And then maybe put it here. So that is what we have. Okay. So let's do this with the return, the weekday. Right? So that we don't actually have any problems with the one variable that is in the variable. So I'm just changing it. That is what we have, and that will be returns, which we sort of make it like so. That's bad. And because if I do it like that, then the first day, which is a now, will not be causing any problems for us. Returns is not defined. Oh, I see. So because we have a 0, well, I have to run it again. Alright. So that will be, because there were some variables that they are 0, 1, so false, true, and it was taking a log of it, and that is problematic, so that doesn't work. Right. And now it works here. I'll just run it again. Right, so these are all of them. So I have all of the x's, so I have a constant, and we can go on and run our regression. Okay. So that will be the model. Let's go to the results. Right, so that will be sm dot OLS. So now we need are the returns of S&P 500. So here I will say my one is the returns at the SPX index, and then I have an X, and then I need the fit. Right? So proof type is HC0. So we have to change those arrays to 0, 1s. Right? Not true false. Right? So it doesn't accept it. I thought we would. Right. What is the problem? Well, let's look at the EF dummies. Maybe not so. And what was it saying? It says that to complete the types, well, we can actually fix them. We can have it as type integer. So these are the returns, these are the dummies, right? Well, let's look at the dummies now. Alright, so they are now 0, 1. I just fix them from true, false to be integers. And then this should work. 1. Oh. What is what wrong? I have no clue. Okay. I think it was adding it on top, becoming more and more. Alright, well. So it was generating them more often for whatever reason. But now it works. But let's look at the results dot summary. And then see. Here are okay, sorry. Well, I mean, this somehow, well, let's make it larger somehow. I don't know what was it doing. I think I was doing it more than once. Alright, so that they were generated twice. 5 days, it took 5 days. True, false were there, the integers were also there. We run it once and we not to have it over and over. That is because of this. So it was again adding it more. Right? So it was concatenating it twice. That was my mistake. Once. Alright. Good. So, well, you ready? Then let's look at the coefficients. And they are all off. Right? Well, we could do it in a rolling window, in an expanding window, just to see. Maybe there were some time periods where there were big day effects. Right? So I mean that, so if I want data from the beginning to the end, maybe I could define a window and then check. Let's say 100 days. Is there any big effect? No. Yes. And then move it. Right? It may have been that sometime in the past there has been some big day effects. Right? And well, to track it, then you could run this and then get all of the coefficients and plot them together with the confidence box. Right? So your typing actually is the last one. And wait so that you finish it. Because if also it now becomes interesting, so it becomes more appealing.
Oh, yes, sir. We have,
Weekday
a,
effect.
yeah, but we mean like we have 4 weeks in a month, right?
Weekday.
Weekday.
So it's Monday, Tuesday.
Oh, so does they have 5? Really? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But,
Take
because of
Monday
the-
off. That is variable effect. So
Okay.
here what we have is, well, this coefficient is a differential effect with respect to the base day, which is Monday.
Mm.
Okay.
Right? And this is not statistically significant, right? So that's sort of what we have. Right? So the p-value is large.
Yeah.
So it means that Tuesday doesn't have a differential effect with respect to Monday. Right? And Wednesday doesn't have either. That's the next people. Thursday and Friday. But what I wanted to do next is to do it in a rolling window framework.
Mm.
Let's say you have it a size of 100, and then rolling this back is the reason. And all of this, then we basically always keep these coefficients, or maybe they're p-values. Right? Sometimes the p-values may be smaller, sometimes higher. For example, let's say we have some time period, this is from 2014 to 2021. Let's say we are in 2019, and then here we see, some of the p-values are small. Right? There may be periods where the p-values were small. So it means that there were time periods where there were weekday effects. Right? That would be interesting to say buy and sell on a certain day. So buy now, sell tomorrow. Or sell today, buy tomorrow. If there is a differential effect. Okay? And but then I mean the thing is that so if there were some periods, some episodes where there were weekday effects, then we have to understand what was happening in the market, and in certain episodes there or certain periods there was a weekday effect. So what was going on? Let's say an effect, well the effect was the anomaly existed when 2019 was. Alright. Then you have to go on and understand the financial market movement. So sort of maybe you should read some news around that dates. Those dates where the weekday effects were. So understand the reason that there were weekday effects. So it potentially would mean that if those reasons happen to take effect again in the future, then you will have weekday effects again. Alright? So that will help you understand when you would potentially have weekday effects and when not. Alright? Or maybe you don't find at all any weekday effect. And that will help you understand when should you go short long, when can you actually take advantage of the weekday effects that exist in the market. Do that as an exercise, maybe that's good. Okay? What you should do is run these, okay, in a rolling window framework. Okay. And then we'll get the p-values, plot them in a sort of nice graph, and then track them. When is sort of each p-value is. Should I maybe start doing markets close on Fridays and open again on Monday.
Oh, this
When
is
official.
So, you have some kind of like lunch break? Because we don't have that. Okay, so,
There is no, I mean, when I came to know that there is in Vietnam for lunch break, I was so surprised.
yeah, even in the supermarket, we have lunch break
That's true, but they don't. So if you look at the day,
from
basically
9 to 6. So, the stock market and the
That's 60, exactly.
Oh,
So that's sort of when things actually just move on, there is no lunch break.
okay, the holidays. Do they,
But there's also,
okay, because I think it's kind of interesting because like there are months that we have a bit more holidays than others.
right. Well, that's called the holiday effect, right? And so you can actually go on and then see whether there is a holiday effect.
Because I think it's kind of interesting because we look at it in like weekly, like just 5 day week, because that is the trading day only.
That's true. Right. So, I mean, one can go on and then analyze and look, write some groups, some programs, just to find some effects somewhere.
And you also mentioned like, just for example, I have one of my friends who say that, well, Monday is my lucky day because like, it's gonna be like very likely that the price gonna go up and then if you want to sell it on Monday, then we can do the regression and show them that there's no kind of like Monday effect.
Right.
Exactly.
That's true. I mean, if Monday is higher, then this differential effect should be strongly negative. Right?
Yeah.
But they are well not. Monday is high, the others are with respect to that they are lower. Or maybe higher, if you sell, not buy. Right? Sort of buy, not sell. Depending on the effects. Let's do that in a rolling window stuff.
Alright.
And then keep track of the p-values, just to see whether there were any effects. Rolling windows in the so, let us define the window as say 100 days. Alright. Now we have the for loop for let's say t in P a range of that starts at W and then goes to the length of the sample. Right? So say returns so this is the T. Now we could say well x local. X local will be x. So here I need an I log. Alright. Of what? Of so that is W minus what is T minus W? T. Alright. And then so here I didn't define bond, but that is bond. Okay. So let's call it Y local. And that will be this, within these locations. Does it make sense what I'm doing? Do you understand it? And not this, but rather two, sorry. And this, what we have. And now we can run the regression. Right, so. So let's go to results local. And then we combine local. And X.
So, do we get the constant here?
Well, in this X there is a constant.
Yes. Okay.
Right? So, but then we need to collect the p-values, right? So let's just run it, so it works, that's excellent, alright? So now we need the p-values, let's look at the results, alright? And then these results saying they should have the p-values given, alright? So this is for the constant, and so on and so forth, right? So these are the p-values of these software. So all of the results in there is p-values, containers for all of those, right? So here I will have, let's call it P0, so that's the base, right? Very simple. Right, so P1, P2, so we get 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So without being too fancy, just to see what the P values are, right? Now we can add them one by one, essentially. So here then we have P0 dot append. You could do it in a more vectorized way, but that is maybe easier. So here then I have the results, local dot key values, right, in the location of 0. And then I need it for so then this is 1, this is 2, this is 3, this is 4, this is 5. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right? So you basically pick them all. Right? And now we can have p-values to be pd dot data frame. Right? Now we can add them one by one. So all of them we can basically add. Right? So I can say that p-values, then we have p0 is equal to p0. Right? I could do it in a dictionary or in a whatever. You know, this looks like very clumsy, but that's okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, now we can plot them, right? We can plot them. So here we can say we have a figure with some x. Right?
We only have one constant, we did 1, 2, 3, 4, there's no 5.
Sorry?
We don't have the P5, we won't have that, because we already see a constant.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one's short.
Exactly. So that is, they are just very nice. They are just 5. So PLT dot subplots of say 5 by 1. Peak size we can set to 6. Now we have x. We can set for I in range of 5 x of I periods where the p-values are small. It means that they are of differential effects. You see them. There are periods when the p-values are not constituting. That's right.
All of them. Most of them.
Most of this. Maybe we could actually also keep the dates. I didn't. That's in this room. I could keep the dates. Let's make it nicer. And let's call it dates. So and then here dates will be first to so here will be a affair of x dot index as t. Let's just rerun it. So just keep the dates, right? And then here, so p-values dot index is equal to dates. Shall work. Dates. And now let's run that again. Okay, now we have the dates. I just took the end date also here and then we see. And, let's say t dot. Well, labels we didn't need actually, because we know this is 0 to 5. Okay. So you have the plots. Oh, very nice. Okay, you're almost there. Can you find a pattern? How do you find a pattern? Let's just ask the challenge in this paper. So I want to basically be able to predict whether tomorrow the p-values will be small. This is one of my goals. Right. So now, well, these are some series, right? So these are the p-values. They're either small and either big. When they are small, there is an anomaly. And we see there is. There are anomalies, right? So there are times when the markets are not efficient. Friday has a smaller p-value. You have to also check whether this is negative or positive. You could actually also look at the differential effect, right? Because if it is positive, it means that Friday has a higher return compared to Monday, right? So that's sort of what it is, what it means, right? And so on and so forth, right? If it is negative, then it means that Friday has a lower effect, right? But this graph definitely shows that there is anomalies, that the markets are not efficient, low. So there are episodes where you have weekday effects. Well, good. But now I want to take advantage of it. Right? So I have to be able to say what happens next week. So can you predict whether p-values are next week low for Friday? Of course you can. I've told you so many moments. You can look at market switching moments, the dynamic range. You can look at whatever. You can say neural networks. Right? So you can have neural networks to predict, say, tomorrow's p-values depending on all of the information that you have. The returns, the past of the p-values, and so on and so forth. You can do that. This is not academic. It is rather just fumbling around. Maybe finding something which helps you in early money. I mean, simply because there are episodes. There are episodes where the markets are not efficient. And I should be able to predict those episodes. If I can, then I will be successful in making money. And you know a lot of models. You have your networks, non-linear models, so you can actually basically capture this, put some dynamics in them, and many other things. I don't know. You should be able to let your sort of thoughts fly freely, and then use the models and maybe find something, and then back test. Right? So whether when you don't invest based on this directly, but rather maybe you go to the beginning of 2025 and start to predict something with the say March 25. Do you have the data? Right? And that was only one index, market index. You can put together a portfolio. Right? That will do the same. Okay. So, and you are good in Python programming, and you know methods, so you can do. But that point, I mean, the point of this graph for my slides is that there is locally episodes of weekday effects. Right? You can change those sort of make this plot a bit nicer in terms of p-values when they are small or when they are high, and so on and so forth. And maybe when you do this fit, then you be careful with the covariance, right? And estimator. Right? Because sort of this covariance should be careful with that. Maybe you should take care of the longer variance and so on and so forth. Good. So well, I also told you that I would like to talk a little bit about the I mean, there is this economic forecasting, so I will talk about that long, as in detail. Maybe I will give you some of my own research and actual stuff that I do, research-wise. I can talk about what I'm doing. And this is not. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about the, just very little, like a few minutes, maybe the beginning of next session too, on technical analysis. Well, I mean, to do technical analysis, then we have a package which is called TA. Alright. And that will be just nice just to see what it is. Okay, so maybe you should install it. And so I don't know, you don't know technical analysis. You came a bit later, right? You came when I talked about this? No. So, well, look, I mean, oftentimes one believes that there is no, that in the long run, that the markets are efficient. Right? But then in short run, as you just saw, then the markets are not efficient because sometimes there is weekday effects, and that persists for some time. So the p-values were coming down and they stayed there for some time. It meant that there was for some time where you can say Friday effects, or either it was lower or higher. Right? So that is a different question. So it means that oftentimes one can look at local movements of the prices or maybe the returns and identify short-term deviations from efficiency. Right? So those people who do this, indeed they are using the so-called package which is called technical analysis. Right? And they are very simple. They're so simple you would just be amazed by the simplicity that they have. Right? But they are perched on theoretical understanding. For example, let's say we have series, so that they look like so. Right? Yeah? Well, these are results. They were low, and then they went high. Right? And now let's say I calculate two moving averages, two averages of this series. So one series that includes this series. Right? So if I basically use data from here to here, then trend. Color. Right? Now let's say we take a smaller window. Going down. So exactly at the black. Right, so here. Right. Then what will the average be? The average will be here. Right. So the red is above the black. So what do you can do? It means the prices are going up compared to the long run. Right? So that's a short video average compared to a longer average video. Right? That's a simple MA filter. Short MA is a Q is 20, right? And then long MA, right? Where the Q is 100. Right? So there are two MAs. One is a smoother, alright, so that's the longer one. So it has a lower variance, right, but bigger bias. And one is shorter, has a smaller bias, it's more accurate, but has a bigger variance. But we are not focusing on the right, but rather just the mean. Alright? So the red one has a more accurate mean, it's a more relevant for that. The black actually takes a longer. It's a longer one, right?
So in short run, like in the short period of the MA with the red one, so like the price going up compared to like the
That's
long
strong.
one. Okay.
So the prices are on the rise.
Okay.
But let's say that we had other situations, right? So the difference in factor situation. And let's say we had the prices like so, and then they came down. Alright? If the situation is like this, then the black could be above the red. Alright, so if I sort of take, say, the median
yeah,
here,
that's true. Yeah.
right? So you see, so then the prices have been on the fall and the downward trend, lower. Right? So that's a simple MA average. So people use it. So this is what I mean. I told people that oftentimes when you watch a movie where there is some finance guy, in the movie there are many screens and there are many graphs.
Yeah.
One of those graphs is probabilities. Right? It's called MAC. Alright, so that's sort of something that helps you get a trend. That's a trend indicator. Alright. There are also other indicators. For example, let's say we have momentum, we have volume, we have volatility. Right? So volatility actually becomes bigger, maybe smaller. But sometimes you want to basically focus on how the risk is, or the volume indicators, and there are many. Alright. So one can actually look at those. Well, the package is nice because it also tells you a little bit of what is this method. For example, it's an Austin oscillator. That's a momentum indicator. Is an indicator used to measure the market momentum. Calculate the difference of the 34 period and 5 period simple moving averages. That's somehow momentum essentially. Simple moving averages. And well, it gives you also a source. Where is it coming from? So that's a very nice page. And sort of how to implement that and so on and so forth. Right? So, well, some other moving average, there are others, and so on and so forth. But let's look at volume indicators. Alright, so then one has this. Right, so there are many indeed. Alright. One is the other side, or for example, let's say there is one which I like, I would love that you see it. Alright. That is the relative strength index, RSI. Which what it does is that it compares the magnitude of recent gains with respect to losses. So if you have been more on the run, things go up and down, right? You may have been more on the rise than on the downturn, all right? Then this is sort of, then you get a bigger RSI. So if it is smaller, then generally you have been on the movements that are more downwards. Right? And these plots that they are sort of short, you always see them. Sort of many, I can't cover them all. But one, two. So it would be nice just to take a look at them. And then one can generate signals, so when it is on the rise, when it is on the signal, if it is 1, then you go long, when it is negative, then you go short, when it is 0, then you don't do anything. Right? And so that's sort of how you can indeed put together a strategy for data scientists and everybody. So that's sort of something that one can do. So generate some program that is generally called a bot, an investment bot. Right? That sort of starts generating a lot of signals and then gives you those, and then you may decide, okay, should I go short or long, and this or the other aspect. All right. Let's have a little break, and then I will implement some of those for you. And then see whether they generate or not. Good?
Yeah.
Lúc này chạy được cái code của thầy không sao chị chạy mà. Cái chị sai chỗ nào?
So, but install maybe this, yeah, before the next section. So click install TA. There's also another package